much, Dr. Sala, for that information. We hope everyone found that useful. So now, because we had so many great questions come in throughout this webinar, we're going to spend some time that we have left to look at those. So to help with the regulatory-related inquiries, we have here, in addition to myself and Dr. Sala, Dr. Sharmil Shah, Chief of Program Operations, Kayla Landry, PEI Analyst, and Marcus Gillespie, Innovation Research Specialist. So we'll address as many as we can, and before that, or after that, our Butte County partners will come back to answer questions pertaining to their county's processes. We also have Anna Nacy, our consultant psychologist. So at this point, I'd like to ask Kayla to start us off.
Okay, everyone. So the first question related to the MHSOAC regulations, it's pertaining to the new innovation regulations. And the question reads, first annual innovative project report is due no later than December 31st, following the end of the fiscal year for which the county is reporting. Each annual innovative project report thereafter is due no later than June 30th and reports on prior fiscal year. I am unclear if the first annual report means for each new innovation project, the first year's report is due December 31st, or if moving forward, all reports are due June 30th. For example, first report due December 31st, 2019 should report data from fiscal year 18-19. Subsequent report that is due no later than June 30th, 2020 should report data from fiscal year ? Why doesn't the 3-year PEI eval report match up with the 3-year plan?
So this is Brian. Great question. I think it does reflect some language in the original PEI regulations that may have been confusing, which was part of why the amendments were written. The intent here is to shift the reporting deadline to be no later than June 30th of each fiscal year. To cover the reporting period to be covered is the most recently completed prior fiscal year. The language that was in the regulations, and this is part of the bureaucratic politics of regulatory language back and forth between us and the Office of Administrative Law, is in fact a little challenging. But again, the intent is to shift the reporting requirement for both these reports and for the 3-year plans and annual updates to be due by the end of the fiscal year. So the prior language, which said 3-year plan, annual update, and didn't have a deadline, implicitly said that the annual update had to be in before the end of the calendar year. We've explicitly shifted that to the end of the fiscal year, and that the data that is required to be reported in the associated reports is to cover the prior fiscal year. So it's infeasible that you could report in June of 2019 for your 18-19 data, unless you're like Supermen and Superwomen, which many of you are. So we would anticipate that you would cover the 17-18 fiscal year data in those reports. For any innovation project that was not active in the 17-18 fiscal year, that implies that there's no progress report to provide for that reporting period. Okay, so I would encourage you to, if you still have questions about, do I need to send in a progress report on a brand new innovation project, talk with our staff about it. But the clear intent here is to shift the recording deadline to the spring of each fiscal year, and to cover the feasible most recent fiscal year's data. In the case of the first 3-year PEI evaluation report, we recognize that there may not be 3 prior fiscal years of data. So if you'll recall, in the first PEI annual report, which was due last December, we provided a partial waiver that basically said, send us what you got so far and a plan for how you're going to fulfill the reporting requirements going forward. Our expectation is that you will have implemented that plan for the 17-18 fiscal year reporting period and be able to report pretty fully on the reporting requirements in the 3-year evaluation report for 17-18 and to the extent you have it available for 16-17 and 15-16 in that 3-year evaluation report that you're submitting by the end of next June. Hope that helps.
All right, thank you so much for your insight. That was actually the only question that we had in terms of the regulatory content. So at this point, I will turn over our time to Seisha so that she can address some of your questions also. And give me just a second while we transition. All right, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me again?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. One thing I also wanted to mention, I actually forgot to mention, is that Holly, our MHSA program manager, actually came from Systems Performance, the Systems Performance unit, and she was really a powerhouse in her interview because of her in-depth knowledge of program and evaluations, and so really developing these analysts. A few of them have promoted to manager positions. I mean, unfortunately for me, but fortunately for them and the departments that they're now managers of. So it is a really great growing ground as well. I wanted to mention that. People have definitely asked for us to send our new employee orientation PowerPoints and other documentation, and we absolutely will. We made a list of everything that we discussed today, and so we'll be sending that in, and that will be made available to you all. We're happy to share any of that and anything else you're looking for. The first question was the number of PEI participants that we serve, and I can't exactly give you an exact number. That is for a few reasons. Some of our programs we do have distinct counts for, the programs that require that. However, some of the components don't require distinct counts, like outreach, and you can't really provide distinct count for that. And then also some people are served potentially between programs. And so we do have numbers in our annual update for each program. And so that's where I would just say go ahead and look there to see what about the distinct or non-distinct. We make sure we're very clear on which type of count it is for each PEI program. So while we would love to have distinct counts with PEI and the outreach component, it's not possible. However, where possible, we do have those in the annual update on our website. Then the next question was, do the providers collect the data on forms and then enter into the database? And the answer is yes. In most circumstances, we provide them with forms as well that they can use to, while they're implementing their programs and going about their services, they collect all the data into their forms, and then they enter that data into their database that we've sent them. And then we collect those databases from each provider, and we are able to aggregate all the data and pull that all into one database when we're ready to look at the data over all programs or individually. So we have the ability to pull that data. But they do enter it themselves, except for in sometimes extreme circumstances where perhaps their computers went down or they are down-staffed. Then we will certainly help with data entry, or there have been times where we've completely had to change their data requirements, and we've just done, like, the amount of data they had to collect, and we have absolutely volunteered to help them in those instances so that the burden is not just on them. Then another question came up about if we collect our FSP data in Avatar or in the DCR, and we actually literally just this month transitioned to Avatar from the DCR. We had been using the DCR to collect all that data. This month we've just gone around and trained all of our FSP staff on how to enter it into Avatar. We do expect some growing pains and some difficulties with those with the Avatar entry and compile. However, we have just jumped in with both feet and decided, you know, we needed to do that. And for reporting purposes, this is going to be incredibly helpful to have it all there instead of in the DCR. And we're happy to share how we did that too if someone's looking for that information. Another question was, are the quarterly meetings program specific, or do we do all those all together? And we do them program specific. So every single program, we have a separate meeting for them. However, that being said, if one provider provides maybe 3 different MHSA programs for us, then we will go ahead and schedule all 3 of those programs back to back to back so that we're sitting in technically one meeting, but reviewing all 3 programs. We do have a couple providers that provide multiple programs for us, but we review each evaluation separately to make sure that we're giving each evaluation the time that it deserves with the providers and for ourselves. Another question was, do we pay our interns? And we do not pay our interns. Our interns come, you know, from Chico State or from other colleges, and they're getting credit. So in many instances, they are not allowed to be paid, and so we generally don't pay them. However, we do have an extra help classification. So every now and then a student may come in who's potentially a student and isn't necessarily getting internship credits, or they have an internship where they can be paid. So we could potentially hire them as extra help, but they have 1,000 hour a year max, and sometimes that can be kind of difficult as well. But if we have it in our budget and we really feel like somebody is vital and we want to pay them, then that is an option that I can pursue and request. The next question was, do we get our data from our providers monthly or quarterly? And we get it every single month from them. The good news about this is that if they're struggling or there's issues, we know about it right away, and we don't have to wait a quarter to know that they're having problems, because sometimes you can't go back and get that data. So by having them turn it in by the 15th of the next month, and that being part of their contract with us, and we've really provided all the tools, all the training, made it as absolutely simple as possible so that the workload is as small as possible, then it is feasible for them. And then if they have any issues, we're made aware of it very quickly, because we are asking them for this every single month. Another question was if we would send our analysts description. This is for me of a barrier recruiting, and that's why I'm so active in my own recruiting, because the analyst series is very nondescript, and the analyst series goes across our fiscal sections, our contract sections, and a whole lot of other county departments who do a whole lot of other things, not systems performance related. And so I've at least been successful in getting some of the test questions added that are data specific for the test that the analysts have to take in order to be banded and interview with us. However, those are some of the barriers we're looking at, and we've definitely looked at potentially a different analyst classification, like a business intelligence analyst, or even making some of the analysts on this team IT analysts, because by all means they're SQL coding and creating databases. That's very technical, and so we've thought outside the box on this, because for recruitment purposes, when someone reads our general analyst job description, it really sounds fiscal in nature, and it can be deceiving. So when I do a recruitment, I actually add systems performance language, and HR will put that on the recruitment to say, this analyst is specifically for systems performance and their duties may include, and I have a list of those duties. So I can definitely send that to anyone as well. And every time I do a posting, I add that. And then I go ahead and I make sure that I have a lot of people that I put the announcement out to, so that we can potentially get some good matches for our team. The number of analysts on our team, we actually have 7.5. We have an extra help at this time currently. So 7.5 analysts. They are all currently at the mid-level or senior level. When some analysts come in, they do start at an associate level, but they quickly tend to move up because of the technical skills that they gain. And then we also have a supervisor and a manager on this team. And then we often have an intern. Most of the time we have an intern, but sometimes there's breaks in between interns. And the next question was about the Access database. So the Access database is just simply part of your Microsoft Access suite. And so you probably already have it on your computers, and so do your providers. They probably already have Microsoft Access. So probably there's not really cost. However, we have run into a situation where a provider did not have the Microsoft suite, and so they did need to purchase that Microsoft suite for their, at least one computer so that they could interact with the Microsoft database. I actually don't know the cost on that. Our IT department would have that, but I'm sure that that's an easy enough thing to look up and find on your own, the Microsoft suite. But the providers, all of our providers do need it. So we make sure they have it. If they don't have it, they need to purchase it. We provide the training to the contractor, so there's not technically a cost to the training part. On my team, I do send, we do a lot of free Microsoft Access trainings online. There's a ton of free ones. Also, YouTube is fantastic. You can learn anything on YouTube, and Microsoft Access is one of those things. So I do send, but I do send our team to Excel classes, Microsoft Excel. I send them to Crystal Reports courses. I currently have a course I'm looking at in Sacramento for Microsoft Access as well. However, the supervisor on this team is an advanced level Microsoft Access user, and so he spends some of his supervision time teaching new staff on Access databases and how to develop them, how to pull the data, how to link the tables, and all of that. And so we just make sure that he's well equipped to be a constant training supervisor. So he's training staff constantly on using these tools, which is just incredibly invaluable to have your trainers right here on your own staff. But of course, this is over the course of 10 years, we've developed all of this knowledge and internal capacity. And then we provide the training to the contractors. So there's no cost except our staff time to go out there and to show them the database, how to enter into the database. And they are simply entering into the fields and the drop-down menus. So they're very simple face sheets on those databases and entry screens. And so we train them ourselves to enter the data once they have it on the forms from their consumers and their participants. And then we show them how to send that database to us via U-Share. And so we realize they have participant information in there, which we absolutely treat just like PHI. And so we're very careful about how we transmit that data. And I mentioned before, we send it via U-Share, which was another question, how are we keeping that PHI safe? It is sent via that secure portal called U-Share, and our IT department had set that up. So we just simply have them send it to us through there, and we make sure we've got it, and we let the MHSA program manager know they turned in their data. And then of course we're always looking at it just to make sure that that the data looks good, it's complete, and we let them know all looks good. I think those were all the questions that I saw for us, unless I missed any.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for all those answers. And again, if you have any more, you can feel free to contact us afterwards. So we are wrapping up pretty early. There we go. We're wrapping up pretty early, but I'd like to go over some follow-up items. First of all, huge thank you to Dr. Zinn for participating in this learning collaborative and for sharing with everyone what Butte County as a rural community is doing to tackle the evaluation requirements and what they're doing to make a difference in their community. So now, following this webinar, we'll be uploading all the PowerPoints and the presentation recording onto the resources page of the OAC website, along with that Q&A document that I mentioned earlier. So if we happen to have any more come in, we'll make sure to add those, and you will have all of that written down to review. Also keep an eye out for more learning collaborative events in the near future, where we'll be inviting guest speakers and county representatives to share their knowledge and experiences. So yeah, again, in the meantime, if you happen to have any other questions or comments, I have everyone's contact information up here. If you have, particularly any specific topics that you'd like to ask about, we have some specialists and individual people that you can reach out to. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to continually working with you all.